It's been called the worst treatment disaster in NHS history. A public inquiry into the infected blood scandal will publish its findings later this month ahead of an expected compensation package, which is thought to be worth more than £10 billion.
Sadly, Sheila Davies, the mother of Olympic swimmer and former gladiator Sharron Davies, was a victim of the scandal following a gallstones operation in the 70s. We'll be speaking to Sharron in just a moment. But first, Dr. Zoe, you're joining us again this morning. Tell us a little bit about what was the blood scandal?
So back in the 1970s, here in the UK, we just didn't have a good enough supply of blood products to treat bleeding disorders, things like haemophilia. So therefore, we were buying blood products from the United States, and people in the US, most vulnerable people who needed money, were paid to donate their blood. So that meant a lot of people in prison or people who had drug problems were donating. Back then, they didn't know that they needed to test for things like HIV and hepatitis C in blood. So those blood products came to the UK, and there were two main groups of people who were affected: people with bleeding disorders like haemophilia, but also people receiving blood transfusions. So in the 70s and 80s, in fact, up until 1991, people were receiving this blood, and some people were receiving blood that's infected with HIV and hepatitis C. And I was actually really surprised. I always knew about this when I discovered the numbers that more than 30,000 people in the UK were infected. In that group of people with bleeding disorders, so the haemophiliacs, 1,250 people were infected with both HIV and hepatitis C, including 380 children. And, the numbers are just quite shocking. So for the past 4 years, there's been this inquiry into what happened, why it happened, I think, for so long, and looking at, finally making sure that people who were still alive didn't receive compensation. It's predicted that 2,900 people have died as a result of this so far, and many other people still unwell and likely to, die young.
The scale of it is remarkable, from 1970s through to 1991, and yet the inquiry only took place between 2019 to 2023. The outcome of that inquiry is going to be very sort of eagerly awaited, isn't it?
Yes, it's due to be on the 20th of May. And I think an important point just to make on this is, now HIV is very much viewed as a chronic long-term illness.
Yes.
But back then we didn't have the treatments we have now, and many people, therefore, did die from it.
Yeah.
Well, sadly, Sharron Davies lost her mum. She joins us now from her home in Somerset this morning. Morning, Sharron.
Good morning.
Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us. I imagine you hearing Zoe go through those figures sort of just brings it all back to what your mum experienced and went through. Tell us a little bit about her and what happened.
Yeah, very much aware of the figures. In fact, the reason I'm speaking out is because the Sunday Times have launched a big campaign and they asked me to front it. So Mum was quite a private person, and we'd kept fairly private about this as a family. She died in 2017 from hepatitis C that she got from an operation way back in the 70s. So far, about 3,000 people have died, many of those children as well, if they're haemophiliacs. And in fact, we're losing 2 a week presently. So the reason for shouting about this is it is an absolutely massive scandal that has been kicked down the road by successive governments, one after the other. And still here we are decades later, and the compensation isn't there, particularly for those that are dying right now and really, really need the help. So, yeah, it was a struggle. And hepatitis C is a little bit like the silent killer. When you first get it, you often don't know you've got it. So it can take anywhere between 10 and 20 years before the symptoms start to come out. And that very much affects your liver, cirrhosis of the liver. Eventually, with my mum, it led to liver cancer, and she died, as I said, in 2017 after taking drugs which affected her life for about 25 years.
And do you think your mum would still, because your mum was incredibly healthy, she was incredibly fit, she didn't complain about anything, so she had no idea that this was happening after the operation until a decade later, essentially, Sharron?
Absolutely. She was. I mean, she was. We all say that about our mums, don't we? Of course we do. But my mum didn't smoke. She didn't drink. She hardly left the country. I think, she'd come up to visit me and help me with the children. She worked for the MOD, civil servant, until she was 70. She never took days sick, unless she was so sick she couldn't get out of bed. she was somebody that didn't take, and she gave. And I think towards the end, she felt very let down because she was almost written off because of her age. She eventually then spent some of her savings to go and see specialists on Harley Street, who said that if they'd come to her earlier, they could have done something about it, maybe offered her a liver transplant or removed part of the liver, because the liver regenerates pretty well. Yeah. But by then it was too late. So they offered her drugs which might prolong her life but end her life, spending several months in bed, and she said she didn't want that. So we just gave her a very dignified death at the end. And so now I just want to speak out, because this must not be happening to other people, and people must not be dying without the support that they desperately need.
So the inquiry's taken place between 2019 and 2023, Sharron. We're expecting those results on the 20th of May. What are you waiting to hear?
Yeah, in fact, the actual report started in 2017, so it's been going on that long, and there's been some interim payments, and there were, in fact, some payments to haemophiliacs quite a few years ago, but they had to sign waivers saying that they wouldn't sue the government for them to get any support whatsoever. So I just want to see the lid opened on this horrendous scandal. We've just had the post office scandal, similar but different, affected people's lives horrendously, and this is the same sort of thing, 1970s, and there were the warnings given by experts at the time. The World Health Organization gave warnings in 1975, and in fact, World in Action did a big program on television in 1975 as well. So it's not as if we didn't know about this, and as Zoe said, it was 1991 before they started testing the blood, and a lot of the blood that was coming from the UK were coming from prisons in Arkansas, and they were batching it. So basically, they would just throw all the blood in together and contaminate the lot.
Wow.
Obviously from those few individuals that actually were carrying HIV and Hep C.
I mean, the interesting comparison, you brought up the post office scandal, because what we've seen from the drama and what's happened there is once there is momentum and a political will, Sharron, to get things sorted out, suddenly the politicians get behind it. And obviously, there's still concerns with the compensation being given to those postmasters and those postmistresses that were a part of that scandal. Do you feel like the political will has shifted now towards this blood scandal and the compensation? I mean, it's suggested it's going to be £10 billion is what they're going to need, that it's going to be there and it's going to be enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think, ITV did an amazing job, didn't you? It's all about uncovering things that are kind of being hidden or pushed away and that politicians don't want to talk about. I've written to my own MP 3 times and not had a response yet, apart from to say that they're busy and they'll get around to it eventually. If you do need help, there are things like the Hepatitis Trust and the Haemophilic Association, and the Sunday Times campaign as well. Don't suffer in silence. There are people out there that want to help you, and let's talk about this. Let's get all the horrible, grisly details out there, and let's help these people desperately who need it.
Can I ask, Sharron, what does justice for your mum look like for you and your family?
That's a really hard question, isn't it? Because my mum died in 2017, and she had a great life, although a lot of the drugs that she had to take to combat the HC caused her, some serious problems. I mean, it had real issues with her bones, and she had several breaks with her bones. So no amount of money brings mum back, and I would love to her to have seen, her great-grandchildren and things like that. And I'm sure she would have still been around, because she was a very bright lady, did the Times crossword every day, worked really hard. My dad's still here at 88, still coaching away. And I was at my ex-mother-in-law's birthday party for her 80th at the weekend. We're a family that tends to live quite a long time, thank goodness. But I just want to see justice for people right now, the most, who are still struggling, and people that were ignored for such a long time.
Well, you're doing an amazing job on behalf of all those people, Sharron, of not being ignored. And I know it's hard, but you're doing a brilliant, brilliant job.
Hopefully we can speak to you again once the results of that inquiry are announced, and we can start working out how they can piece together the compensation or whatever that justice looks like. Thank you very much. And